They didn't pack a suitcase, that's the part that comes back first. No overnight bag, no duffel, not even my toothbrush. Just my hoodie tied around my waist. And my tablet clutched to my chest, like it could explain everything they wouldn't say. We pulled up to Grandma Millie's house just past lunch. The sky was too blue, like it didn't get the memo that something irreversible was about to happen. Dad turned down the radio mid-song, a country ballad about coming home. I still remember the way he said it, too casual, too light, "We'll be right back." I blinked at him from the back seat, already halfway out the car. Mom turned around in the passenger seat and gave me this tight smile. The kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "Go on, sweetie, Grandma's waiting." Except she wasn't. Grandma opened the door with a plastic cup of iced tea in her hand. Her reading glasses still sitting low on her nose. "Millie," Dad said, like they were dropping by for a barbecue. She looked from him to me and back again. That pause, that beat of surprise, was enough to tell me she hadn't known. Still, she didn't ask questions. She just moved aside and let me walk in. The screen door squeaked shut behind me. I stood in the middle of her entryway. The air smelling like pine sol and something stewed too long. My sneakers squeaked on the linoleum. "Just running some errands," Mom called from outside. Already halfway down the porch steps. "Be good, honey." And then the car pulled away. I stood on the porch and watched until the red taillights faded behind the curve of sycamore trees. I kept watching for a while after, just in case they came back. They didn't. The day moved on without them. Grandma offered me a tuna sandwich. I wasn't hungry. She didn't push, instead she went back to her crossword puzzle. Tapping her pencil like a metronome. I sat on the edge of the couch, swinging my legs. Still waiting for the sound of tires on gravel. She showed me the guest room before sunset. It wasn't really a room, more like a corner of the house. That used to store old wrapping paper and puzzles with missing pieces. There was a twin bed against one wall. Covered in a quilt that smelled faintly of mothballs and peppermint. "No toothbrush?" she asked, half a glance in my direction. I shook my head. She sighed, rubbed her temple, and walked down the hall without saying anything else. A few minutes later, she came back with a travel-sized toothpaste. And a brush in plastic wrap. "It's one of the ones they give you at the dentist," she muttered. I nodded, like I understood everything, like I was fine. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan. Its slow rotation humming like a tired lullaby. The corners of the room were dark, unfamiliar. Somewhere down the hall, Grandma coughed, turned over in her creaky bed. I heard the house settle, pipes clicking in the walls. Like they were keeping secrets. She had said it just before turning out the light, "They'll be back any day now." But she didn't look me in the eye when she said it. And I knew, in a way you don't need grown-up words for, that no one was coming through that door. The ceiling fan kept spinning, my tablet buzzed once, low battery warning. I didn't plug it in, I just watched the blades go round and round. Until I didn't know if I was awake or dreaming. They said they'd be right back, they said so. At school, I told people my parents had to travel for work. California sounded believable, big enough to feel far away. Vague enough that no one would ask for specifics. I said it with a smile, which made it easier to swallow, for them anyway. No one challenged me, not really. One teacher, Mrs. Kenner, gave me that look during roll call the first week. Like she was waiting for me to say more. But when I didn't, she just nodded and handed me a reading log. Like the conversation had never happened. Kids asked things, of course. Who picks you up? Where do you live now? I always said, with my grandma, just for a while. And tried to change the subject. Sydney Collins, who sat behind me in science and chewed on her eraser, was the nosiest. She kept saying we should have a sleepover. Or that her mom could drive me home after school if my parents were super busy. I remember one day in October when she pressed too hard. "Don't you miss them?" she asked during lunch. I was peeling a hard-boiled egg. I stared at the white, rubbery surface for a long time before answering. "They call a lot," I said, which wasn't true. But it wasn't a full lie either. I mean, they could have called. That fall, Grandma got me a new lunchbox. Bright purple with cartoon puppies on the front. She said it was the only one left at Walgreens, like that made it better. I didn't say anything, just packed it every morning. With a peanut butter sandwich and an apple. I always ate fast, careful not to let anyone see the inside flap. Where Grandma had written Millie H in faded black marker. It was hers, not mine, like most things. Some days, I'd watch the sidewalk from the classroom window. While the teacher droned on about decimals. I'd imagine a silver sedan pulling into the parking lot. My mom in her sunglasses, my dad waving like everything was normal. I pictured them standing at the office with a smile that said, "We're here now." But the bell always rang, and it was always Grandma waiting at the curb. Arms crossed, engine running. One afternoon, I found her sitting in the kitchen with a letter in her lap. Her mouth was tight, the envelope was open. But she hadn't taken the card out yet. She slid it across the table without a word. I recognized the handwriting instantly, rounded letters, little hearts above the eyes. Inside, "Hope you're well, love, Mom and Dad." No date, no return address. I nodded, slid it back across the table, and went to do my math homework. That night, I woke up to the sound of her voice. The hallway was dark, the air thick with the smell of fried onions from dinner. I crept closer to her bedroom door. "She's asking about you," Grandma said, pause. "I know, but she's your kid." I didn't hear the rest, just that, just enough. The next day, I tore a page out of the notebook. Where I'd been writing all the things I thought we'd do when they came back. Go to the movies, get matching pajamas at Target, buy Halloween candy together. I took it behind the garage after school. And lit it with a match from the kitchen drawer. It burned too fast. By the time it turned to ash, I didn't feel lighter. Just a little more quiet. I stopped marking birthdays after 13. Not out of protest, just because no one else seemed to notice. I got the usual card from Mom and Dad in the mail, same as always. Neatly folded, signed, "Love you always." With a $20 bill tucked inside, like it made up for anything. I didn't even open the envelope that year. Just slipped it into the drawer under my socks and forgot about it. By then, I had learned not to expect much. Grandma Millie was slowing down, she never said it outright. But I could see it in the way she held the banister a little tighter. Each time she climbed the stairs. She'd forget what day it was or whether the oven was still on. Once, she called me by my mother's name. I didn't correct her, I just brought her some water. And sat beside her on the couch until she dozed off. At school, I kept to myself. I wasn't unfriendly, just unavailable. I did my work, I turned in essays, I skipped homecoming. And told people I had the flu, I didn't. I just didn't want to sit in a gym filled with rented tuxedos and floral corsages. While thinking about the dresses I'd never get to show my mom. Instead, I stayed home and fixed the leaking bathroom faucet. Took me 4 YouTube videos in a full afternoon, but I did it. The drip stopped, it felt like winning something. That became my thing, fixing things. Lamps, stuck drawers, the busted heater in the laundry room. Grandma started saying I had a good hand, like her father used to. I started keeping a little notebook of what needed repairs. and crossed things off one by one. It made me feel like I had some control over something. Aunt Cheryl began stopping by more often. She'd bring over frozen casseroles and cluck about the state of the porch steps. Sometimes she offered to take me for the weekend. But it always sounded like she was offering out of obligation, not desire. I always declined. I didn't need another house where I didn't belong. Her daughter, Hannah, once asked why I never posted any family photos on Facebook. I shrugged and said I wasn't that into social media, which was half true. The other half was harder to explain. Every so often, another envelope would arrive in the mail. Different handwriting, but the same tone. Hope school is going well. We're thinking of you. Love, Mom and Dad. I started tossing them unopened. I could tell which ones were theirs by the weight and the postmark. At 17, I went to parent-teacher night alone. I walked the halls, sat through the speeches, shook hands with teachers who nodded too gently and offered too many smiles. When I left, the parking lot was full of taillights. Car doors slamming, kids waving from windows. I walked home. It was cool that night. The kind of fall air that smells like damp leaves and faint wood smoke. I sat on the porch steps and pulled my knees to my chest. The porch light flickered. I didn't move to fix it. I whispered into the dark, just loud enough for no one to hear. They're not lost, they're just not looking. Grandma Millie died on a Tuesday. I remember the rain more than the moment. It wasn't dramatic, just steady. Like even the sky couldn't quite cry about it, just quietly gave in. We were in her room when it happened. She was in her faded nightgown with the blue lilacs. One she refused to throw out, even after the hem frayed. She mumbled something I didn't catch, and then just exhaled. I sat there for a long time after, holding her hand. Long after it stopped being warm. The TV was still playing an old detective rerun in the background. The detective never figured out who did it. The funeral came quickly, the way small-town funerals do. The Rockfield Baptist Church smelled like lemon oil and old hymnals. I ordered white lilies, printed the programs. Chose a photo where Grandma was smiling but still looked like herself. Aunt Cheryl helped with the cookies. And Hannah posted on Facebook, celebrating a life well lived, rest easy, Grandma Millie. The service had already started when I saw them. Linda and Bruce, my parents, slipped into the back row like ghosts. Mom wore a gray shawl, her eyes too wide, her mouth trembling just enough to seem genuine. Dad kept adjusting his collar, like the shirt was choking him. Neither of them looked at me at first. It was like they didn't know how. After the final hymn, people moved toward the fellowship hall. For lemon bars and dry sandwiches. I stayed near the back pew, not ready to mingle. That's when she came over. Natalie, Mom said, voice soft and sticky. I didn't answer. She leaned in for a hug. I stepped back. Her arms froze midair. She let them drop slowly. Dad gave a helpless sort of shrug. The kind people use when they've run out of rehearsed lines. You look well, he said. Please don't, I replied. My voice was calm. That surprised me. People noticed. Aunt Cheryl's jaw tightened. One of the church ladies looked away, pretending to fuss with the punch bowl. After a moment, Mom tried again. We've missed you, we've thought about you every day. You just didn't show up for any of them, I said. I expected her to cry, she didn't. She just blinked, then looked at her shoes. Dad opened his mouth, then closed it again. We should talk, he said, maybe not here. Why? I asked, so you can feel better. Neither answered. The sympathy card they gave me was blank inside. Not even a line, just my name and a signature. Like I was someone they barely remembered. I carried it in my coat pocket as I walked out into the drizzle. The air smelled like wet gravel and regret. Aunt Cheryl caught up to me on the sidewalk, umbrella in hand. She didn't say anything, just held it over both of us until we reached her car. She squeezed my shoulder before I left. "You handled that better than most grown women would have." I didn't feel grown, I felt like a child again. Except this time, I wasn't waiting for the car to come back. I was watching it pull in 10 years too late. They kept texting after the funeral, once a week at first, then every few days. Mom would sign off every message with, "Love you always." Like she hadn't spent the last decade proving otherwise. Dad's were shorter, "We should talk, you're old enough now, let's sit down." I didn't respond, but silence, I've learned, only makes some people talk louder. Eventually, I gave in. 1 hour, public place, no surprises. We met at the Denny's off I-94. The one next to the gas station with flickering lights and a rusting ice machine. I got there early, chose the booth by the window, ordered black coffee I didn't plan to drink. They were 5 minutes late. Mom walked in first, wearing a floral blouse. I'm pretty sure she'd worn in one of my childhood photos. Dad followed, still tugging at that same frayed polo collar. Like it hadn't fit him in years. "Sweetheart," Mom said, sliding into the seat across from me. I didn't say anything, just stared at the plastic placemat. Laminated and sticky around the edges. Dad sat across from me, clearing his throat. "You look good." I nodded once. The waitress came. I declined food, so did they. "We just wanted to reconnect," Mom began, folding her hands like we were praying. "Things were really hard back then, we were so young." "You were 35, I said. She blinked. Dad leaned in. "We were struggling, Nat, fighting broke. Grandma said she could help." "She did," I said evenly. "You didn't." He looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he picked up the menu and stared at it without reading a word. "Mom tried again. We made mistakes. But we thought you'd be better with her. We weren't ready to be the kind of parents you needed." "You weren't ready to be parents at all," I said, sharper than I meant. "So you left me on her doorstep like a delivery." "She offered," he said, like it counted. "I sent cards," she said. "Cards," I echoed, "with $20 and no return address." The silence between us swelled. Full of everything they couldn't say. And everything I no longer needed to hear. Dad finally looked up. "You can't just erase us." I leaned forward, resting my arms on the table. "You did it first." He exhaled hard through his nose. Like that was the worst thing anyone had ever said to him. The waitress came back, asked if we needed anything. We all said no. I almost laughed. We needed so much, but none of it was on the menu. "I still think about you," Mom whispered, eyes shiny, "every day." I stood up, pulled a $5 bill from my wallet, and slid it under my untouched mug. "This is all I owe you." I didn't look back as I walked out. The bell above the door jingled once, cheerful and misplaced. Outside, the wind had picked up. I zipped my jacket and kept walking. Not toward a car, but toward the version of myself that no longer needed to explain why I wasn't willing to forgive. People who had only returned once it was convenient. Some folks call that bitterness, I call it memory. The letters didn't stop, neither did the voicemails. Though I stopped listening to those after Christmas. Sometimes they came with apologies. Sometimes just lines like, "Hope you're doing okay." Or, "We miss you." They always ended with some version of, "Can we talk?" The truth is, we already had, at that booth, in that silence. I didn't need more talking, I needed space. Grandma's house was mine now, but it didn't feel like it right away. I kept the furniture where it had always been. Like moving anything would make it harder to remember her. But over time, I started repainting things. Soft grays, sage green in the kitchen, a light yellow in the room that used to be hers. I made the front porch safer, fixed the steps she always tripped over. Rewired the lamp that used to flicker near the couch. Every small repair felt like a conversation we never got to finish. Aunt Cheryl still dropped off groceries sometimes. She lingered with her arms crossed, saying things like, "They're still your parents." Or, "It's not too late." I'd just nod and change the subject. She meant well, but meaning well doesn't mean you're right. I spent more time alone that year, but it wasn't the lonely kind. I read more, started baking, made a list of bills and paid them on time. I planted basil in a cracked pot by the windowsill. And started drinking tea instead of coffee. One Saturday, I found a new letter, no return address. But I knew the handwriting. "We're getting older, we don't want to leave this world without knowing you again. Please, Natalie, we're sorry." I didn't cry. I folded the letter once, then again. And slipped it into the drawer where I'd been keeping every unopened card since I was 11. The top one still had glitter on the envelope. A birthday card from when I turned 15, I never opened that one either. Later that evening, I stepped out back, the air was cool but not cold. I lit the fire pit and sat on one of the patio chairs. I'd inherited from Cheryl's garage sale. On my lap was a notebook I hadn't touched in years. The one where I used to write things they'd do when they came back. Take me to Dairy Queen, buy matching pajamas, ask how I slept. I tore the pages out one by one, feeding them to the flame. The paper curled fast, turned black at the edges, then disappeared. I didn't do it out of anger, there was nothing left to burn in that regard. It was just time. Inside, the house was warm, familiar, mine. I brewed tea and sat by the window, listening to the quiet. No TV, no phone, just the sound of the heater kicking on. And the slow ticking of the kitchen clock. Some people think closure comes from conversation. I think it comes from a door you choose not to reopen. They said they'd be right back, they weren't. I was.